Next, on Currents News, it's election day in Georgia, and the stakes couldn't be higher, with the rights of the unborn possibly hanging in the balance.
Somos Community Care says they're fully prepared to help the city and state with vaccinations, but they're having trouble getting a hold of doses. I'm Emily Drooby. That's ahead.
Then, after intense criticism over a slow vaccine rollout, New York announces large sites around the Big Apple will become drive-thru vaccination centers. Plus, Pope Francis to celebrate his first Mass of 2021. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. The polls are now closed in Georgia. Voters there casting ballots that will impact the entire country as the balance of power on Capitol Hill will be decided.
The whole world is watching the people of Georgia.
President Donald Trump rallying his base on the eve of a statewide election with national significance.
Each of you is going to vote in one of the most important runoff elections in the history of our country.
Georgia now at the center of the political world as Democrats Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff challenge incumbent GOP senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, respectively. At stake, control of the U.S. Senate.
The whole country is watching us right now because we have the power, Georgia.
We're on the front lines of this battle for the entire country.
The high-level stakes bringing in high-level campaigners for the final push.
Vote!
For President-elect Joe Biden, a pair of Democratic victories could aid in advancing his policy agenda.
One state can chart the course, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next generation.
While Republicans need at least one win Tuesday to put a check on Biden and the Democratic-led House.
If you don't vote, there could be nothing stopping Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi.
Pro-life activists have also been working to get the two Republicans elected, arguing if Democrats win the majority in the Senate, the pro-abortion Biden-Harris administration could expand the Supreme Court and force taxpayers to fund abortion. Meanwhile, enthusiasm in the Peach State is high, with a record 3 million voters casting their ballots early. If November's election is any indication, it will be a nail-biter of a race. More than $500 million have been spent on ads. Still ahead in this newscast, St. John's University political expert Brian Brown joins us to talk about the Georgia runoff, what's at stake, and what we can expect. That's still ahead. More news out of Georgia. Their Secretary of State is speaking out after an hour-long phone call he had with President Trump was leaked to the public. Secretary Brad Raffensperger says it was a call he dreaded for weeks.
I never believed it was appropriate to speak to the president, but he pushed out. I guess he had his staff push us, and they wanted to call. The challenge that we have, first of all, we're in a litigation mode with the president's team against the state of Georgia.
Raffensperger says he leans on his faith in tough times, saying the Lord calls us to be honest and treat people with dignity. President Trump and his legal team are not commenting on settlement discussions and say that there was nothing inappropriate about the call. The National Guard is being deployed in the nation's capital ahead of Wednesday's vote count to ratify the Electoral College results in Congress. Several Republican lawmakers are expected to object to the outcome of the count from several swing states. Demonstrations are expected, and that has some church leaders concerned that tensions could escalate.
They definitely now have churches on their radar screen as a potential target, given what's already happened. We've asked the police for 24-hour presence, visible presence at congregations.
D.C. police say protesters have destroyed church property in the past and that local churches are, quote, a flashpoint for contentious interactions between demonstrators. Somos Community Care has been on the front lines of fighting the pandemic since day one, helping the city and the state with education and testing. But now their leaders are angry because they're having a difficult time getting vaccines for their own frontline workers. Still, they continue to prepare. Currents News' Emily Drooby has more.
So most community care is hopeful that on Wednesday, 400 of their frontline employees will be vaccinated at 2 of their facilities, including this one.
We are the front line.
Board Chairman Dr. Ramon Talaj says they've been promised 7,000 more doses by next week for their other healthcare workers, but getting those doses has been a big fight.
Our doctors have been called to go to a hospital to get the vaccine. That's a joke. We are physicians.
SOMA's network of physicians helps immigrant communities and those in underserved communities. They've been fighting the pandemic from the front line since day one, testing over 800,000 people.
We show character in difficult times, using our own money to be on the front line, even knowing that it could short our life.
Now they've prepared for the next step, distributing the vaccine. 600 doctors' offices, 200 dentist offices certified to give vaccinations, and 125 fully trained field teams that can be sent anywhere. They have enough freezers for 400,000 doses, and each doctor's office can handle at least 2,000. But they've still had to fight for the right to be included in the mayor and governor's distribution plans, just like they had to fight for their healthcare employees' doses. They are also involved in another fight, educating those who are hesitant about the vaccination.
It's not an easy proposal, quite truthfully. People do have fears.
SOMO's CEO Mario Paredes says allowing patients to get and learn about the vaccine from their own doctors is important.
How wonderful it is to have providers, physicians that know you, that you trust them, that you could explain to them and guide them and provide trust in what is being done.
They've also spent over $1 million on a vaccine campaign.
Our patients have a trust in what we say and what we do.
Dr. Talaj, who is working with both the governor and mayor on distribution plans, says as soon as they're given the green light, they will be ready to vaccinate their patients. In Manhattan, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Meanwhile, Governor Andrew Cuomo is expanding the number of places where you can get the shot. He says large sites such as the Javits Center and city and state university campuses will allow for drive-thru vaccine operations. This is in addition to the nursing homes, hospitals, pharmacies, and urgent care clinics already ramping up to distribute doses. While the governor has not given a timeline for when the drive-thru sites will open, he did say they are already setting those up. Before you get your shot, you have to check if you're eligible for a vaccine. You can do that by going to New York State's Am I Eligible app. The new software announced Monday asks you to fill out a simple form. Once you apply, it will then connect you to vaccine administration centers. For more information and to see if you're eligible, head to covid19vaccine.health.ny.gov. With 2 vaccines currently available and more on the way, many Americans are wondering, which shot should I go for? Currents News' Michelle Powers reports on which vaccine is recommended by medical experts based on individual needs.
2 coronavirus vaccines currently have the green light in the U.S. The first is Pfizer's vaccine, 2 shots given 21 days apart. This one is recommended for anyone 16 years and older. The second is Moderna's vaccine, again 2 shots, but this one is given 28 days apart and is recommended for those 18 and over. Research is still being done to determine whether these vaccines are safe for children and younger teens. If you're pregnant, you can choose to get the vaccine, but you should know that these vaccines were not extensively studied in pregnant women, so there's limited safety data to look at for that group. On the other hand, COVID-19 itself poses a risk for pregnant women. The CDC says that some women who contract the virus are at an increased risk of severe illness and might also be at an increased risk of having a preterm birth. Both Pfizer and Moderna created mRNA vaccines, which aren't thought to be harmful for a nursing child, and that's according to the CDC. For those who are immunocompromised, you can choose to get the vaccine, but these shots weren't substantially studied for your underlying health conditions. So there's not enough data on how safe they are or how effective they are yet. On the other hand, getting infected with COVID-19 can be risky for people with compromised immune systems. For those with allergic reactions, the CDC says you shouldn't get the shot if you're allergic to the components in these vaccines, and you can review those on the vaccine's product labels. Michelle Powers, Currents News.
New York City students could be in for yet another shutdown. The United Federation of Teachers calling for another closure if the city hits a 9% infection rate. It's a complex demand since the city says its numbers are already at 9%, while the state calculates the Big Apple at 6%. The president of the teachers union says he's following state numbers and urges the city to do the same. The state's largest health system is still suing patients over unpaid hospital bills. This after Governor Cuomo ordered hospitals to stop the lawsuits last March. Northwell Health filed suits against more than 2,500 patients last year, seeking an average of $1,200 in unpaid bills. Among those affected include teachers, construction workers, and those who have lost their jobs due to COVID. Throughout the Christmas season, hundreds stopped by to get a look at the Diocese of Brooklyn's Christmas display at Grand Army Plaza. And now it's time to say goodbye. Notable this year, the sculpture Angels Unawares, a 3.8-ton statue depicting the plight of migrants and refugees standing shoulder to shoulder on a raft. The work of art is a reproduction of a sculpture dedicated at the Vatican for the 105th World Day of Refugees and Migrants. Angels Unawares is now making its way to Atlanta, Georgia, where it will be on display at Holy Spirit Preparatory School from January 7th to February 3rd. There's a lot more news headed your way. The Holy See is detailing its plans for the coronavirus vaccine rollout. We'll go to Rome for the latest. Then the pandemic has altered some holiday traditions at the Vatican, but that's not stopping Pope Francis from celebrating his first Mass of 2021. And St. John's political science professor Brian Brown joins us for an in-depth discussion of the Georgia runoff, how a change in the balance of power could affect abortion laws in this country. Stay with us.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
I have to tell you that the stakes in this election could not be higher.
President Trump rallying supporters in Georgia. Getting back to our top story, all eyes are on the Peach State tonight. The results of the runoff election there could affect the entire country. Joining us now to explain what's at stake is Brian Brown, political science professor at St. John's University. And Brian, how important is this runoff election? And for everyone watching at home, whether the GOP keeps control of the Senate or the Democrats have the majority in both houses of Congress?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, this is all about power, and the outcome is really going to determine who controls power. Will we have one-party rule with a Democrat in the White House and Democrats controlling both chambers of Congress, or will you have some sort of check in divided government and sort of stopgap measures to keep things in place?
Yeah, pro-life activists are concerned that if Democrats control the Senate, it'll affect abortion laws. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think any legislative gains that were made over the last 4 years in the Trump administration, pro-abortion activists will seek to reverse. This is what happens when you have a change in party. So you could see things like the Hyde Amendment, which Speaker Nancy Pelosi has pledged to dismantle regarding federal funding of abortions. Joe Biden campaigned on codifying Roe v. Wade into federal law. So all of these matters will be on the table come Inauguration Day.
Sure. Now, when do you think we'll know the winners and when will they take office?
So the election, the polls close at 7 o'clock. It looked like it's going to be a very close race. Military ballots and overseas ballots don't get open till Friday, or they still can be counted. If it's close, it may take a couple days to count all the ballots and certify the election. And we've already seen high voter turnout in early voting, but early voting doesn't mean early results.
Right. And then as soon as the results are known, will they take office right away?
Once the election is certified, they will be sworn in and take office.
All right. Now, Senator Kelly Loeffler is one of several Republicans who want to block the electoral count in Congress on Wednesday. President Trump still hasn't conceded. So will this action by some in the GOP have any effect on the outcome of the presidential race?
Ultimately, no. The results have been certified by the states. The Electoral College affirmed them back in mid-December. What's going to happen tomorrow is traditionally a ceremonial type of event. It's enshrined in the Constitution, But there will be legislative delays and procedural tactics used. There will be challenges made. The House and the Senate will recess, go back and debate these objections, but ultimately you need the majority rule and vote to prevail, and that will not happen.
So what kind of effect could this have on the Republican Party as a whole? It seems like they're split.
Absolutely. I think the establishment Republicans clearly want to move on and turn the page. Trump Republicans are holding on to every last-ditch effort. They really have to do some damage control. The Republican Party is clearly divided, and they really need to put the pieces back together again if they want to be a formidable governing party moving forward.
So what about all of those supporting Trump in the hopes of overturning the election? Take Ted Cruz. Trump used to call him lying Ted Cruz. Why do you suppose he's involved now supporting the president?
Well, in politics, your enemy today could be your ally tomorrow. And Senator Cruz clearly has presidential ambitions still. He's looking forward to 2024. He's going to need the hard right Trump Republicans if he wants to find success in a Republican presidential primary, and he's positioning himself for that.
All right, Brian Brown from St. John's University, thanks for checking in with us, and we'll continue to check in with you about this.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Retiring from his service to Congress, Jesuit priest Father Pat Conroy is stepping down as chaplain of the House of Representatives. Father Conroy served as the 60th House chaplain since 2011, a position responsible for offering a prayer at the beginning of each day when Congress is in session. Following the news of Father Conroy's retirement, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi announced that a woman will take over the position for the first time. Retired Navy Rear Admiral Margaret Kibben will now serve in that role. The Presbyterian minister has served as the U.S. Navy's chief chaplain and the chaplain of the Marine Corps. Because of pandemic precautions, the Vatican has canceled one of its most touching ceremonies, the baptism of infants. Pope Francis has traditionally baptized children in the Vatican's Sistine Chapel on the feast of the Baptism of the Lord, which marks the conclusion of the liturgical season of Christmas. But the Holy Father will celebrate his first public Mass of 2021 on the solemnity of the Epiphany of the Lord. The January 6th Mass commemorates the visit of the Magi to the baby Jesus. Hoping to curb the effects of the pandemic, the Vatican is now preparing to roll out its vaccination efforts. The plan is to vaccinate everyone in the city-state and the Holy See in the second week of January. Claudia Torres has the details from Rome.
The smallest state in the world is preparing to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. To store the vaccines, the Vatican acquired an ultra-low temperature freezer. The hope is that by the second week of January, they will have enough vaccines to cover the needs of the Holy See and Vatican City-State. Vatican employees will receive the vaccine in Paul VI Hall, where the Pope holds his biggest events. Medical personnel from the Vatican Directorate of Health and Hygiene will administer the doses. A set of criteria has been established to guide the selection process for the administration of the vaccine. Priority will be given to people with highest susceptibility and/or exposure to the virus, like health and security personnel, the elderly, and people in contact with the public. It's possible that Pope Francis will receive the vaccine and that a number of doses will be given to people in need around the Vatican.
That was Claudia Torres reporting. The world's smallest nation has a population of about 800 citizens. No word on whether Pope Francis will be among those receiving their first doses. U.S. bishops are encouraging Catholics across the country to participate in an all-night pro-life prayer vigil on the eve of the March for Life. The National Prayer Vigil for Life is held from Thursday, January 28th to Friday, January 29th, marking the 48th anniversary of the Supreme Court's 1973 decision to legalize abortion. Due to pandemic restrictions, dioceses across the country will take turns live streaming this year's event. The broadcast will begin with a rosary at 8 p.m. on January 28th in Washington, D.C. Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City will take over for the homily. Bishops from various dioceses will lead holy hours throughout the night. And the vigil will end the next morning with Mass celebrated by Archbishop William Lori of Baltimore. As bishops encourage pro-life efforts, the only woman sitting on federal death row is looking for clemency. Lisa Montgomery was scheduled to be executed on January 12th. But last month, a federal district court determined the government acted illegally when the execution date was set. Montgomery was convicted of strangling a Missouri woman to death who was 8 months pregnant. The baby was then cut out of the victim and kidnapped by Montgomery. The child survived the incident. Late last year, 2 leading American bishops addressed the president and attorney general by name in a bid to stop the death penalty. Archbishop Paul Coakley, who heads the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Domestic Justice, and Archbishop Joseph Naumann, who leads their group on pro-life activities, issuing a statement that says, in part, "We call on President Trump and Attorney General Barr in recognition of God's unmerited gift of self-giving love. Stop these executions." Still to come on Currents News.
They're actually going to hang it up inside and frame it forever so the heroes can always be remembered here.
A new mural rises from the ashes of the bombing in Nashville, honoring first responders and raising money for the community. And a new film is in the works honoring one of the Diocese of Immigrants' most beloved saints, Mother Cabrini. We'll tell you all about it coming up. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A new movie about Mother Frances Cabrini is in the works. A Philadelphia businessman is spearheading the project, which plans to cover the life and work of the first American saint. The film, called simply Cabrini, will be shot in what's known as the 5 Points neighborhood in Lower Manhattan and is expected to be released later this year. Mother Cabrini arrived in New York from Italy in 1889 to help America's growing Italian immigrant population. Something positive has come out of the Nashville bombing on Christmas morning. A new mural has been installed to honor the heroes who helped save countless lives that day. Tosin Fakile spoke with members of the organization who helped create it.
Our designer just came up with this beautiful mural, and then we knew we had to paint it somewhere. So we wanted to get as close as we could to the bomb site while still being safe.
The faces of those 6 officers now here on the street where they worked to evacuate people before that explosion.
I took 3 different pieces of plywood. If you look closely, you'll be able to see them. And they painted it at a studio here in town and then brought it here and installed it on the existing plywood that was here.
The mural is at the Hard Rock Cafe, sitting in a boarded up window that was destroyed during the explosion.
Once the window is fixed, they're actually going to hang it up inside and frame it forever so the heroes can always be remembered here.
Tim with I Believe in Nashville says their brand is about the community.
For us, the community is also the officers that risk their lives, and so we wanted to have something that would honor them and a way for them to know that we appreciate their sacrifices.
This week, purchases from the company will go to this 2nd Avenue community.
100% will be donated to Marcus Lemonis' 30-day Nashville Fund, which helps provide grants for small businesses, and Music City Inc., which is the Visit Music City Fund, which actually puts gift cards in the hands of impacted individuals.
That was Tosin Fakile reporting. The group that helped create the mural says they're hoping to get all 6 officers out to the site to see it. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.